Have you ever closely observed the neighbor's dog, especially on the day its owner, who had been by its side for a decade, suddenly passed away? It lay flat out on the front porch. Its eyes stared blankly toward the gate. It refused to eat for an entire week. Witnessing that heartbreaking scene, any of us would exclaim in pity. We often tell each other that the animal is mourning its owner. But let's pause for a moment to think logically. Is it truly a deep, philosophical sorrow just like humans? Or is it simply because its familiar automatic food dispenser has stopped working? This question has sparked debate in the scientific community for hundreds of years. Today, we will uncover the truth together about death in the animal kingdom. We will explore how other creatures deal with loss. This journey will take you from the sun-baked African savannas to the freezing waters of the Pacific Ocean. And trust me, the upcoming truths will make you rethink who the truly emotionless ones on this planet are. For centuries, we humans have always harbored a subtle arrogance. We place ourselves at the top of the food chain. We proudly boast about our superior intelligence. We assume by default that only humans have the privilege of experiencing grief. Shedding tears for someone's passing seems to be the measure of civilization. Rituals like wearing black, mourning, holding funerals, or writing eulogies are always highly regarded. They are considered a downloadable content package, meaning a premium, add-on content. This upgrade package seems to be exclusively installed for the human brain. So what about the animals out there? In the eyes of many, they are just mindless biological machines. They live like non-player characters. That is, background characters not controlled by the player in an open-world game. Their life cycle revolves only around the most basic programming. They wake up, forage for food, hide from predators, and reproduce to maintain their species. If an individual in the herd unfortunately logs out of Earth, everything still goes on normally. The remaining ones seem to just gloss over that lifeless body without a second thought. We think they would react like, "That's a pity, but well, one less mouth to feed." This perspective has been deeply ingrained in the subconscious of human society for a very long time. Ancient philosophers even asserted that animals have no souls. But modern science is gradually overturning all those outdated prejudices. The latest research is giving humanity a harsh slap in the face. It turns out, the notion that animals lack complex emotions is just a sweet lie. It is actually just a way for humans to justify our own cruel behaviors. We use that logic to feel less guilty when hunting them, locking them in glass cages, or dominating the entire natural world. But Mother Nature always conceals secrets far beyond our imagination. The truth is, the boundary between human grief and animal grief is much blurrier than you think. Emotions are not an invention out of nowhere by the human brain. They are the result of millions of years of persistent biological evolution. Grief is essentially the price to pay for social bonding. When animals learn to love and rely on each other to survive, they must also learn to face separation. Pain is a defense mechanism of the brain against the severing of a relationship, and this mechanism does not discriminate whether you walk on 2 legs or 4. To prove this, let's open the files on the most sentimental animals. The first file will take us to the barren lands of the Dark Continent. Let's start the journey with nature's magnificent giants, elephants. Elephants are famous for their superb memory and incredibly tight-knit herd mentality. If you think human funerals are a grand and solemn ritual, then perhaps you have never seen elephants hold a memorial. Zoologists have spent decades observing them in the wild. Among them, Cynthia Moss is one of the leading experts. She has spent most of her life at the Amboseli National Park in Kenya. Here, she has recorded countless instances of wild elephants exhibiting highly spiritual behaviors. These behaviors are so complex that we cannot explain them by ordinary survival instincts. Try to imagine an incredibly silent scene in the middle of the savannah. When an old elephant in the herd can no longer walk and collapses, everything seems to stand still. The other elephants do not panic or rush away to find new pastures. They slowly approach and stand in a circle surrounding the body. All are immersed in a suffocating silence. There are no trumpeting calls, no fighting over food. They begin to reach out their long trunks. They gently stroke the corpse of their fallen companion. They pay special attention to the tusks and the lower jaw of the body. This action is performed with extreme care and gentleness. It looks exactly like the way we humans stroke a loved one's face for the last time before the coffin lid closes. Some elephants even break branches or use dirt and sand to cover the body. They seemingly want to shield their kind from the prying eyes of scavengers. This ritual can last for hours, or even several consecutive days. But the most haunting and touching story doesn't stop there. Elephants' memories retain sad moments much longer than we think. Many years after the incident, the herd might happen to pass through that area again. By now, the once giant body is merely a dry skeleton lying under the sun. Instead of ignoring it like a roadside rock, the herd once again stops. The quiet atmosphere of the memorial service from years ago comes rushing back. They use their highly sensitive trunks to touch each white bone. They sniff, they cherish, and they pass the bone fragments around like a silent prayer. The strange thing is, they completely ignore the bones of other animals, like buffaloes or rhinos. They strictly reserve this special attention for the remains of their own kind. Science cannot find any survival benefit in this sequence of actions. There is no food reward hidden beneath those dry bones. No hunting lesson is learned from this. The only plausible explanation is that they remember. The memory of their companion still lingers in the minds of these giant creatures. What do you think about this incredibly strange behavior of elephants? Is this true grief from the depths of their souls, or merely a pure animalistic instinct of curiosity? Stick around for a bit and leave a comment below to let me know your perspective. If elephants represent solemn remembrance, then primates bring a completely different story. Monkeys and apes have a genetic structure very close to humans, and the way they face death also replicates the first and most brutal stage of grief. That is the denial of reality. When losing someone incredibly important, our brains usually tend not to accept the truth immediately. We deceive ourselves that this is just a nightmare and everything will soon return to normal. Primates also have an identical psychological reaction. Many archaeological studies and zoological observations have recorded haunting scenes deep in the forest. The most prominent is the image of macaque or chimpanzee mothers who lose their newborn babies. Maternal love in the natural world is always the strongest bond. When the fragile newborn takes its last breath, the mother monkey seemingly cannot accept this shock. Instead of leaving the body behind to continue moving with the troop, she clutches that tiny corpse tightly to her chest. This cradling doesn't just happen for a fleeting day or two. There have been cases where scientists observed mother monkeys carrying their dead babies for many consecutive weeks. The decomposition process begins according to the inevitable law of nature. The corpse gradually deforms, shrivels up, and emits a foul odor. But the mother monkey appears blind and deaf to all those signs of death. She still holds her baby tightly to her chest everywhere she goes. When climbing towering trees, she only uses 3 limbs to move. The other limb firmly holds the body. She picks fleas and lice from the fur of her dead child. She fiercely bares her fangs to chase away any monkey in the troop who dares to come close out of curiosity. She shares food with the lifeless body, trying to force ripe fruits into the stiffened mouth. The scene looks both eerie and heartbreakingly agonizing. It is like how you desperately hold a charging cable to plug into a phone with a completely dead motherboard. Even knowing the internal circuitry is burnt out, you still patiently plug it in day after day, month after month. You hope some absurd miracle will make that screen suddenly light up again. These primate mothers are also desperately waiting for a cry or a sneeze from their child. They completely refuse to accept such a cruelly harsh reality. The evolutionary bond between mother and child in primates is designed to be incredibly strong. It is so strong that even the Grim Reaper's scythe cannot sever it immediately. The mother monkey's brain takes a very long time to slowly process the information regarding the loss. She must undergo a withdrawal process from oxytocin, the love hormone that was released in massive surges when the baby was born. Only when the corpse completely decomposes and falls apart, or when the mother herself is utterly exhausted. At that point, she finally lets go and leaves the remaining remains behind. This behavior of denial shows that emotions are not a switch that can be easily turned on and off. It is an agonizingly painful internal struggle. This pain transcends the logical calculations of survival instinct. It makes the animal willing to trade its own safety just to cling to an illusion. The The story of primate mothers is clear evidence that affection is not an exclusive property of humans. However, nature is not always drenched in such sentimental tears. The truth in the animal kingdom is always complex, multidimensional, and sometimes extremely pragmatic. This is when we must put the touching stories aside. Things will start to take a slightly darker and more calculated turn. Let's turn our attention to the sky and talk about crows. Black crows have long been labeled by humans as omens of bad luck and messengers of death. They possess an astonishing intelligence, far surpassing most other bird species. The intellect of a crow is even compared to that of a 7-year-old child. If you have the chance to observe crows in the wild, you will witness a highly peculiar phenomenon. When a crow unfortunately dies and falls to the ground, chaos immediately begins. Instead of flying away to escape danger, you will see a whole flock of crows flying in from everywhere. They perch on surrounding branches or hop in circles around the corpse. Dozens of crows will gather and start cawing deafeningly. Their sounds echo across a corner of the forest, sounding like a sorrowful requiem. This scene easily makes romantic individuals think of a funeral in the sky. Surely they are mourning the passing of a feathered brother. Apologies for cruelly pouring cold water on your cinematic moment, but in-depth scientific studies point out a much harsher truth. Science says they are not mourning in the slightest. In reality, the crows gather there absolutely not to offer condolences or pay tribute. They are setting up a perimeter and opening a crime scene investigation, meaning they are conducting an investigation of an actual murder scene. To crows, the corpse of a fellow kind is an invaluable source of data. They carefully observe the body to analyze and find answers to a series of survival questions. Who or what animal killed their comrade? Has the predator left, or is it still lurking in a nearby bush? Was this death caused by a physical attack, ingesting poison, or disease? Is this area still safe for the whole flock to continue foraging tomorrow? Their deafening caws are not cries of sorrow. They are continuous warning signals, broadcasted to summon more accomplices to analyze the situation. They will memorize the enemy's face, memorize the location of the murder, and communicate it to other crows. Instead of a tearful memorial service, this is actually a vital intelligence-sharing meeting. An incredibly brilliant evolutionary twist. Crows do not let the death of their fellow kind go to waste. They extract every bit of information from that tragedy to use as a protective shield for themselves. This behavior demonstrates a terrifyingly cold and sharp calculation, using the death of others as a lesson to save their own lives. This reminds us that not every behavior related to death stems from emotion. Sometimes, it is merely a survival algorithm optimized to perfection. The pragmatism of crows helps them thrive in the harshest environments. But if crows represent reason, the vast ocean conceals a completely different tale. Not every phenomenon in the natural world can be easily explained by cold-blooded survival spreadsheets. There are cases where evolutionary mathematics are completely rendered helpless. The most prime example is the shocking event that occurred in the summer of 2018. The main character of this story is Tahlequah, an orca killer whale designated as J35. She lived with her pod in the waters of the Pacific Northwest. Killer whales are inherently apex predators, intelligent and incredibly ruthless toward their prey. However, tragedy struck when Tahlequah gave birth to a fragile daughter. This precious baby could not survive and stopped breathing just half an hour after being born. Any animal abiding by survival principles would abandon the corpse to conserve energy. But Tahlequah made a decision that left the entire human world watching in awe. As the calf's body began to sink into the deep sea, the mother dove down. She gently used her head to push and lift her child's body. She patiently balanced to push the corpse, keeping it afloat on the water's surface. Every time the body slipped away, Tahlequah would dive deeper to retrieve it once more. Just like that, she continuously swam and supported her deceased child. 1 day, 2 days, then a week went by. The whole world held its breath watching the agonizing journey of this giant mother. Ultimately, that funeral procession lasted for 17 consecutive days and nights. Tahlequah swam relentlessly, covering a record distance of over 1,600 kilometers. That distance is equivalent to swimming along the entire length of Vietnam. During those 17 days, the mother whale could hardly hunt properly. She gradually became exhausted, starved, and severely weakened. The other whales in the pod had to take turns sharing food to keep her alive. Tahlequah's action yielded absolutely no survival benefit. It went against every fundamental theorem of the theory of evolution regarding energy conservation and optimizing survivability. Viewed purely from a biological perspective, this was a meaningless act of suicide. Why would one of the ocean's most intelligent creatures drive itself to death just for a soulless corpse? The world's leading marine biologists had to sit down and debate, and after ruling out all hypotheses about reproductive instincts or conditioned reflexes, the only plausible explanation that the scientific community could agree upon was an absolute emotional exhaustion. Tahlequah was truly going through the most profound and intense grieving process. It was an extreme agony, tearing apart a mother's heart. This pain was so immense that it made an apex predator of the ocean, willing to throw away its own life. She would rather die of exhaustion than accept letting go of her precious little daughter to sink into the dark sea. The 17-day story of Tahlequah is not just a strange natural phenomenon. It is a resolute affirmation of the invisible power of love in the animal kingdom. Amidst the vast, freezing ocean, love and grief still burn fiercely. It makes human complacency over exclusive emotions seem incredibly vain. But this marvel also poses a great challenge for us in scientific research. Of course, there are always heated opposing viewpoints within the scientific community. The battle among researchers on this topic has never reached a conclusion. One camp firmly asserts that animals absolutely possess the capacity for empathy and truly experience sorrow. Meanwhile, the opposing camp continuously sounds the alarm about an invisible psychological trap. That trap is scientifically termed anthropomorphism, meaning the tendency to humanize. This is a very common human affliction of always liking to impose our thoughts and emotions onto other animal species. Take a simple and humorous example in our daily lives, like when you see your pet cat at home squinting and glaring at you with half-closed eyes. You immediately assume it is despising and judging your character. But in reality, its retinas might just be tired, and it is just very sleepy. Hastily projecting deeply human concepts like funerals or silent prayers onto animals is a double-edged sword. It can obscure their biological nature and the incredibly fascinating evolutionary mechanisms truly hidden within them. We are easily deceived by emotions and overlook cold survival algorithms like those of crows. But if thinking the other way around, insisting that animals are entirely devoid of emotion is also a form of extreme stubbornness. We cannot deny the glaringly obvious neuroanatomical evidence. The brains of most mammals share exact foundational structures with us humans. They also have the amygdala region tasked specifically with processing fear and anxiety. Their bodies also automatically pump out massive doses of the oxytocin hormone to forge emotional herd bonds. Their neural circuits are entirely capable of processing chemical reactions related to loss. When the hardware foundation is identical, there is no reason why the software running inside should be entirely different. Humans do not stand outside the circle of nature. We are merely one branch on that grand evolutionary tree. So why do we arrogantly assume that complex emotions are an exclusive invention of our own species? Animals might not cry by shedding physical tears like we do, but the internal trauma in their brains when losing a bonded partner is entirely real, and the ways they express that trauma are far more diverse and rich than our language. In the end, these stories from nature have taught us an incredibly profound lesson. Whether it is a restless herd of elephants caressing dry bones in the desolate savanna, or the image of a primate mother adamantly refusing to let go of her slowly decomposing infant's body, or the shrewd flock of crows holding an emergency meeting to dissect survival information, the colorful natural world is sending us a very clear and powerful message. Death always leaves a massive, unfillable void in any population, and every single species equips itself with distinct methods to confront that cruel emptiness. Grief is absolutely not a privilege that makes humans superior to the rest of nature. Conversely, pain is a solid anchor proving we share the same biological origins. It is evidence showing that we are connected to every living being diligently breathing on this blue planet. When a vital connection is broken, this entire universe, no matter what form it takes, feels the sting of pain. If today's video has succeeded in making you view the animal kingdom with a more empathetic and different perspective, hit the subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on the next fascinating historical and scientific stories. Don't forget to hit the share button on this video for your friends who also share your passion for uncovering the truth. And remember to leave a comment below to let me know, has your beloved pet at home ever done anything strange that made you absolutely certain they possess a remarkably deep emotional world? Who knows, your little story might just become the perfect inspiration for next week's video script. Goodbye, and see you all again.